All right, so we're diving into something pretty cool today. I think you'll find it pretty interesting.
Yeah.
We're going to be tackling this 20-minute script that we found.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and it's all about taking your English conversations like to a whole other level, like going from basic to advanced. And I was actually really surprised by some of the stuff in here.
Really?
Yeah, it's not like the typical like learn these phrases approach.
Right.
It's more about like the psychology and like the subtle things behind a good conversation.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, so it dives into greetings right away.
Yeah.
And I know you're probably thinking like, ugh, not another lesson on saying hello.
Right.
But trust me,
Okay.
this is where it gets interesting.
Okay.
So they're not just giving like alternative phrases to say.
Yeah.
They're talking about how those first few words that you say can like shape the whole interaction.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy.
Yeah. I noticed that too. It definitely caught my eye when I first saw it.
Yeah.
It's interesting how they connect those first few words to like setting expectations and creating this sense of openness.
Yeah.
Right from the beginning.
Exactly. And like, for example, they suggest using how's life treating you
Oh.
instead of how are you?
Interesting.
And at first I was like, okay, like what's the big deal?
Right.
But then when I really thought about it, I was like, oh, it's like subtly signaling that you're open to a more genuine conversation.
Yeah.
And like a deeper conversation.
Yeah, you're not just looking for the robotic, I'm fine.
Right, you're inviting them to share something real.
Yeah.
Not just like give a robotic answer back.
It's almost like giving a permission slip.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
A permission slip for a deeper conversation.
Right.
That's brilliant. And speaking of going deeper, this script really emphasizes moving past small talk.
Yeah.
Which I think we can all agree.
Totally.
We're kind of tired of it.
It's like the default,
Yeah.
but it never leads to anything really memorable.
Yeah. Exactly. And they give some really cool techniques for breaking out of that small talk rut.
Oh, cool.
One that stood out to me was using open-ended questions.
Okay.
So instead of just asking, how was your weekend?
Right.
Ask, what did you do over the weekend?
I see.
And, at first I thought it was just about getting a longer answer.
Yeah.
But they talk about how it's connected to this psychological principle of self-disclosure. So when you ask an open-ended question,
Yeah.
you're encouraging the other person to reveal more about themselves,
Cool.
their experiences, their thoughts.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and here's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
They were talking about how self-disclosure triggers a reciprocal response. So when we share something about ourselves, it makes the other person feel more comfortable sharing something about themselves too. So it creates like a sense of connection and trust.
Wow. So those open-ended questions are really powerful.
Yeah.
It's not just about getting more information.
Right.
It's like building that connection.
Yeah, it's like a dance.
Yeah.
Like you open up a bit, they open up a bit.
I like it.
And all of a sudden you're having a real exchange.
Yeah.
Not just like pleasantries.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And you know what else I thought was really cool?
What's that?
They talk about incorporating personal updates,
Oh, yeah.
but in a way that invites further conversation.
Yes.
So instead of saying like, oh, I'm so busy,
Yeah.
you say something like, work has been keeping me on my toes, but I'm learning so much. What about you? What have you been up to?
Oh, I love that example.
Yeah.
Bro, it's so cool.
Gives the other person something to hook on to.
Yeah.
Instead of just shutting down the conversation,
Right. You're inviting them in
Yeah.
a little bit.
even if it's just for a moment.
Right. And it all goes back to that reciprocity thing. Like when you share a little piece of yourself,
Right.
you're encouraging them to do the same.
Keeps the conversation flowing.
Yeah.
Creates that mutual interest.
Exactly. And it's like you're saying, hey, I'm interested in your,
Yeah.
I'm willing to share and I want to hear what you have to say.
It's all about those subtle cues
Yeah.
that get the conversation going.
Definitely going to try that one out.
Yeah.
And there's another technique they highlight that I thought was really insightful.
Oh, what's that?
They call it active listening.
Okay.
And it's basically going beyond just hearing the words
Right.
and actually demonstrating that you're engaged and genuinely interested.
I think we underestimate that a lot.
I know, right?
The power of just showing that we care.
It's huge.
Yeah.
And they give some really practical tips for doing this.
Oh, cool. Like what?
So like instead of just saying, that's cool,
Yeah.
Try saying something like, that's fascinating. How did you get into that?
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Or wow, I'd love to hear more about it.
Those go beyond just acknowledging.
Yeah.
Like you really want to understand.
Exactly. And it can be so powerful for building rapport.
Yeah. And making the other person feel heard.
Right. Like you're saying, you're interesting and what you have to say matters to me.
Yeah. And isn't that what we all want to hear?
I think so.
Yeah.
It taps into that human need for connection and validation.
Totally. And I think that's something we can all get better at.
Yeah.
No matter how good we are at conversation.
You're right about that. And speaking of getting better, the script also dives into expressing opinions.
Oh, okay.
In a thoughtful and engaging way.
Okay.
I'll admit, this is an area where I struggle sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
How's
like,
that?
I don't want to come across as too strong
Right.
or dismissive, but I also want to be able to share my perspective.
You want to be authentic.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they tackle that head on in the script.
They do.
Yeah, they really encourage us to move beyond simple agreement or disagreement.
Right.
And actually share the why behind our opinions.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Like, instead of saying, I think that's a good idea,
Yeah.
you could say, in my opinion, it's a great idea because it addresses X and Y.
Right.
However, I'm wondering about the potential impact on Z.
That's a good example.
Yeah.
It adds so much more nuance and depth.
It makes it more interesting.
Yeah,
And it invites further discussion.
totally.
And I love how they emphasize respecting the other person's perspective.
Yeah.
Even if you don't agree.
Right.
So they suggest using phrases like, that's a great point. I hadn't thought of it that way before.
Oh, that's good.
Or, I see what you mean, but I have a slightly different perspective.
It's about creating that space for dialogue
Right.
where different viewpoints can be explored.
Without judgment or defensiveness.
How?
I am really digging this approach.
Me too.
It's all about fostering understanding.
Right.
Not just trying to win an argument.
Exactly. And you know what?
Breaks that.
I think that's a perfect segue into the next section of this script.
Okay.
Which focuses on those advanced phrases
Oh, yeah.
that can elevate your conversations.
Oh, cool.
You're right. That is a great transition.
Thanks.
It's like taking those fundamental principles,
Yeah.
the respect, the understanding, and weaving them into how you speak.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like you're taking those building blocks,
Yeah.
the respect, the understanding, and you're expressing them in like a more nuanced, sophisticated way.
Exactly. It's like adding those finishing touches, that make a conversation really sparkle.
Yeah.
And they have some real gems in this script, like phrases that go beyond just like, the I agree or I disagree.
Right. Like you hit the nail on the head.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
I'm totally stealing that one.
Yeah. It's so much more powerful than just saying, yeah, I think so too.
Right. And they also have some good phrases for when you want to disagree,
Oh, yeah.
but without sounding like confrontational.
Yeah. Like instead of saying, I disagree,
Right.
which can be kind of abrupt,
Yeah.
you could say something like, I see it differently because, or that's a valid point.
Yeah.
But have you considered?
It's like you're opening up a space for debate,
Yeah.
but it's still respectful.
Right. You're acknowledging their perspective, but you're still presenting your own.
And that's such a key skill.
Yeah.
In any conversation.
Whether it's casual or professional.
Right. It's that balance between assertiveness and respect.
Right.
Which leads to better conversations.
Yeah. More engaging.
One phrase that I found really interesting that they suggested was, I've always wondered about that.
Oh, yeah.
It's so simple,
It is.
but it's such a good way to express curiosity and keep the conversation flowing.
And it kind of shifts the focus
Yeah.
to the other person's expertise.
Right.
You're saying, you know something I don't, and I want to learn from you.
It's like a conversational invitation.
Yeah.
It's
It's really nice.
And it taps into that universal desire to share our knowledge and experience.
Yeah. To be helpful.
Right. And it makes you sound interested, which is always a good thing.
Always a plus.
Yeah, for sure.
It leads to those aha moments, too,
It does.
where you learn something new.
Right. Or you gain a fresh perspective.
Totally.
Okay. So we've talked about greetings, moving past small talk,
Yeah.
active listening,
Right.
expressing opinions, and even using some of those more advanced phrases.
Yeah.
But there's one key element that they emphasize throughout the whole script:
What's that?
confidence.
Oh, yeah.
It's like the secret ingredient
It is.
that makes all of these techniques work.
Right. Like you can have the most eloquent phrases,
Yeah.
the most insightful questions. But if you don't deliver them with confidence,
It's not going to have the same effect.
Yeah.
It's like that saying, it's not what you say, but how you say it.
Exactly. And the script really reminds us that confidence comes from practice
Right.
and repetition.
Yeah.
Like getting comfortable with these techniques, trying them out
Yeah.
in different situations,
Right.
making mistakes along the way.
I think that's something we often forget. Giving ourselves permission to stumble.
Oh,
You know, we're so focused on being perfect
right.
that we hold ourselves back.
We're afraid to experiment,
Yeah.
to play with language.
And to let our personality shine through.
Yeah. And that's a shame,
It is.
because I think that's where the real magic happens.
I agree.
When you just let go of that fear and you're just yourself.
Yeah, you're authentic. And you know what else I love?
What?
They talk about vulnerability
Oh, yeah.
as a strength.
It is.
And that's something I'm really trying to embrace.
Yeah, it's not a weakness.
Right.
It's a strength.
For sure.
And it's a journey.
Yeah.
It's not a destination.
Right.
The more we embrace that journey,
Yeah.
the more fun it becomes.
And speaking of the journey,
Yeah.
this script doesn't just leave us hanging. You know,
right.
They give us all these amazing techniques and then say, good luck.
Right. They give us advice,
Yeah. They give us some really practical advice
Yeah.
for putting all of this into action.
like finding opportunities to practice,
Yeah.
whether it's with a language partner
Right.
or in a conversation group.
Or even just recording yourself
Oh, yeah.
and listening back.
Right.
That's a good one.
Yeah, they really emphasize that.
It is. And there are so many resources out there these days.
There are
You know, like language exchange apps.
online forums,
Yeah.
virtual conversation classes,
Yeah, it's incredible.
all at our fingertips.
And you know, I think one of the best ways to practice is just recording yourself,
That is a great tip.
speaking and listening back
Yeah.
to like identify areas where you can improve.
Yeah. Because it really allows you to,
Just step outside yourself.
Yeah.
Be like, oh, that's how I sound.
right? Are you using those filler words?
Yeah.
Are you rushing?
Mm-hmm.
Are you pausing
Right.
to let the other person respond?
Yeah. It's amazing what you notice
It is.
when you listen back.
Yeah. And, sometimes it's cringy,
It can be.
but it's also really insightful.
It is.
Like you can turn those observations
Yeah.
into opportunities to grow.
Right. And you know what I find really encouraging
What's that?
is that the script reminds us that progress, not perfection, is the goal.
That's true.
You know, it's okay to stumble.
It's okay to make mistakes.
Yeah.
To not always get it right.
Right.
That's where the real learning happens.
It is.
In those moments of imperfection,
Yeah.
we discover what works, what doesn't,
Uh-huh.
what we need to adjust.
And that's what I love about this whole deep dive.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It's not about being perfect.
It's about the process
Yeah.
of growth.
It's about embracing the process of growth.
Yeah.
And continuously striving to be better.
To be more confident,
Yeah.
more engaging,
More authentic.
more authentic. Yeah.
Right.
It's about recognizing that communication is a skill
Yeah.
that we can always improve.
And the more we invest in that, the more rewarding our interactions become.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
Well said. I think we did a pretty good job unpacking this script.
Yeah, I think we hit the nail on the head.
And you know what?
Yeah.
I know you're probably thinking, this all sounds great,
Uh-huh.
but how do I actually make it happen?
Right.
Don't worry.
Yeah.
We're not going to leave you hanging.
Okay, good.
In the final segment, we're going to give you some specific tips
Awesome.
and strategies
Perfect.
to put all this into action.
Great.
So we've explored all these cool techniques, from upgrading our greetings to expressing opinions and even sprinkling in some of those advanced phrases. But how do we actually make this happen, in our everyday lives?
Yeah, that's the real challenge, right? Like, it's one thing to understand it all, but actually putting it into practice,
Yeah, exactly. It can be kind of daunting. Like, where do I even start?
right? Well, I think it helps to start with self-awareness. Pay attention to your current conversational habits. Like, what are your go-to phrases?
Yeah.
Are you asking open-ended questions? Are you really listening? Or just waiting for your turn to speak?
That's such a good point. It's like taking inventory before you start adding new tools.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Once you've kind of identified those areas where you can improve, you can start incorporating the new techniques, but it's going to feel awkward at first.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
I remember when I first tried to use more open-ended questions, it felt so forced and unnatural.
Yeah.
But then I realized that's just part of the process,
It's like learning any new skill.
Right.
It takes time and practice.
It's like learning a new dance move.
Exactly. You're going to step on some toes at first.
Yeah. But the more you practice, the smoother it gets.
And eventually you don't even have to think about it.
It just becomes natural.
Right. And speaking of practice, the script emphasizes finding opportunities to try out these techniques in a safe environment,
Yeah, like a language partner or conversation group.
right? Where you can experiment without feeling self-conscious.
And there are so many options now, like language exchange apps,
Oh yeah, online forums.
virtual conversation classes.
Amazing.
And you know what? I think one of the best ways to practice is just recording yourself,
Well, that's a good one.
speaking, and then listening back.
Yeah, you can really step outside of yourself and listen to how you sound.
Are you using filler words? Are you rushing? Are you pausing?
It's amazing what you can notice when you listen back.
Yeah, it can be a little cringy,
Yeah,
but it's so insightful.
it really is. And you can turn those observations into opportunities to grow.
Right. And what I find really encouraging is that the script reminds us that progress, not perfection, is the goal.
Yeah, it's okay to stumble.
It's okay to make mistakes. You're not going to get it right every time.
Right, that's where the real learning happens.
It's in those moments of imperfection, where we figure out what works and what doesn't.
Exactly, and that's what I love about this whole deep dive.
Yeah, me too.
It's not about becoming perfect overnight.
It's about the journey.
It's about embracing that journey of growth and continuously striving to be better communicators.
More confident, more engaging, more authentic.
Exactly, and recognizing that communication is a skill that we can always work on.
Yeah, and the more we invest in it, the more rewarding those interactions become.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a question. What kind of conversations do you want to be having? And what steps can you take today to start leveling up your communication skills?
It's a journey worth taking. And remember, you don't have to go it alone.
There are so many resources and communities out there to support you.
So go out there, have those conversations, make those connections, and keep exploring the power of language.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
See you next time.